Hello and welcome to the Gothic Unicorn. Today I'm going to be doing a bit of a quick make, but one that I go back to fairly regularly for different projects, and it's one that I think makes a great little addition to any spooky miniature scene. My main focus today is going to be a skull bead. You can get these in various different forms. You can get them where they are made out of semi-precious stones. You can get them in different colours. I've just got a very basic skull. It's a bead, it's got a hole through the middle. Not much more to say about it. But this is going to form the basis for a floral arrangement. Now, if you want something that looks a bit more realistic, I say realistic, you know, within the doll's house scale, you could use the skull of a guy like this. Now this is more towards real size in the doll's house universe. For 1/12, that sort of looks around about real size, and you know, that's fair enough. Obviously somebody like him would need painting, but you could do it. This is the guy who donated his arm for last week's project. He just happens to still be lying about, but I'm not going to use him. I'm going to use the bead because I want this to actually look like it's a decorative piece. But as I say, if you wanted to put a plant growing out of a real skull, go right ahead. Now you could also use other beads to make a basis for a similar floral arrangement. I have done in the past. Wooden beads are great because you can generally paint them, get them to match your scene, but I like spooky, so I'm going with my skull. The first thing I'm going to need is a base for the skull to stand on. Now you could use wooden circular pieces. I've used them in the past for various projects, but today I'm just trying to use bits that are lying about, and I've obviously always got lots of cereal box board lying about. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use my punch, and I'm going to cut 3 of these. Now this one is probably about 6mm, and it's going to make a quite adequate size base. And all that you do with these is you stick them together. A bit of glue goes a long way, and you just pile up these to make a reasonable thickness of base. Now what I will do is, once the glue has dried from sticking them together, I will put a bit of glue around the outside to give me a better finish. It's just something that I like to do, and then that will give me a nice base that I can paint. Probably just going to paint it black and stick my skull on. Now if I wanted this skull to look more real, I'd paint it, because I find the white looks very fake, but I'm going to leave the skull as is this time and not bother painting him, because I want it to be a decorative piece. You could paint it to match your decor. If you've got a spooky scene that needs a pop of colour, paint it. It's not going to hurt. A bit of acrylic craft paint will go a long way on something like this. But I'm going to leave this white, and then I'm going to add the colour through my flowers. Whilst I wait for the paint on my base to dry so I can stick all of that together, I'm going to get on with making the flowers. Now, there are some fantastic flower makers in miniature, and they make the most beautiful, true to life replicas of real flowers. I'm not one of them. Now, whilst I appreciate their work, and I know that some of them sell amazing kits that you can make real looking flowers, I just make with what I've got. And what I've got most of is ordinary printer paper, copier paper, whatever you want to call it. Just that bog basic white stuff that you can put through your home printer, or that you can rescue bits of from mailings, that kind of thing. Kids' homework tends to be a good source of it because they tend to sometimes get worksheets, and you can use bits off the sides of it and things like that. What tends to happen with me is I print something on part of the sheet and then I save the rest for when I want to do something like this. And all that I've done is I have coloured a section of the paper with one of my alcohol markers. This is a colour called light violet. If that's light violet, I would love to see the dark violet. I've actually put a couple of coats on because I wanted quite a deep colour, and these alcohol markers are quite good for building up layers of colour. Anyway, this also has the advantage, there's too much rubbish on my mat today. This also has the advantage that it goes through, so you don't have to colour both sides if you don't want to, but you can. And if I just put some ink onto this side, it will go darker on this side as well. It's simply because it's so thin. If you've got thicker paper, well, it won't soak in the same way, but you might prefer how it looks. And I really need to clean my mat. It's still dirty after doing all the bits with tea and things like that. And I have cleaned it, but it keeps coming back. And the other thing I'm going to use is I'm going to use a little flower punch. And this one is just one that's got 6 petals. It's just one I sort of picked at random, decided I could make something with that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut out some flowers from this. I'm going to do that off camera because my hands are going to get in the way, but I'll be back in a moment. I have punched out 9 flowers in that size. I'm not sure that I'm going to use all 9. I'm not 100% sure how many I'll decide look good, but I wanted to give myself plenty of options. Now, what is ideal for doing this is either a mouse mat, or I've got a foam mat that's designed for doing some paper piercing. So it's thicker than a mouse mat, but it's a similar sort of material. I can't find either of them. They must be in storage. So I'm going to use an eraser and a ball tool. Now this is a smaller ball tool than I might otherwise use. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my flower onto the eraser, which provides a little bit of give. And I'm going to use the ball tool in a circular motion to start creating some shape to the flower. I start off in a circular motion, and then I do a side to side between the petals, which is easy because this one is 6 petaled. The more you work it, the more you will get a certain amount of curvature. Now, I don't know if you can see this, but that is actually sitting up from the surface now. And this is just a case of working it until you're happy with the shape. And I'm just going to repeat this and repeat it until I've done all of them. And that's my first stage for making flowers. Now I am going to say at this point, I have done a similar project before. I did a similar project almost 2 years ago as one of my creepy Christmas projects, but I thought it was worth giving it its own video because it's one of those little projects that can really make a difference. And as I say, you can use any bead as a vase, you don't have to go with a skull. I'm just a spooky soul at heart, so really like any excuse to put skulls and things into my project. With the flowers shaped, the next step is to give them stems, and to do that I'm using green beading wire, and this is 28 gauge, so it's rather fine, but I like it for this because it makes stems that sort of disappear. You could use plain wire and paint it, you could use paper stems, whatever you want. This is just my personal preference. And what I've done is I've cut pieces that I can't hold to size, and I'm now going to attach each one to one of the flowers. Now I've got some glue over here, which is my tacky glue that has been sitting around for a while, so it is incredibly tacky. And all that I do is I just stick a stem on the back of a flower, and then to allow this to dry I will pop it into my eraser. I just find that this is the best way for me. This is one of those tasks where if you do lots, which I did when I did a florist's shop, you'll find techniques that work for you. This isn't probably how the better makers of miniature flowers do things, but like I said, I'm not going for perfection. I'm not going for complete and utter realism. I'm going for something that adds depth and character to my miniature scenes. And I'm just basically going to repeat this until all 9 of these little flowers are attached to a stem. Now, this isn't the eraser I normally use. The eraser I normally use has got more holes in. This one's survived a while, but all I do is I get my little toothpick and I make a hole, and then I've got somewhere to put it. I do sometimes have a piece of foam about which came from packaging somewhere along the line, which is great because it's a similar size to this and it is great for holding little flowers and things like that. But this is how I put together these flowers. And what you will find is once the glue is dried, you can actually obviously position your stem and your flower by bending it. I tend to use tweezers to do that because it is a bit delicate, but then you can actually have your flowers so it looks like the flower is on top of the stem, whereas at the moment I'm just putting them on the back without much consideration for how it will look when I arrange it. The glue that is attaching my flower heads to the stems is almost dry. It's definitely sort of disappearing as it dries, so it's time to add the centres to the flowers. Now I can't find my black 3D paint, which I think is a black enamel, so it's a shiny finish, but I have found this black diamond stickles. Now stickles, if you don't know, is glitter glue, and it's great because the glitter doesn't escape. Don't like loose glitter, it goes everywhere. But this is what I'm going to use, and I've put some onto my little bit of card, and I'm going to be adding it with my cocktail stick to the centre of the flower. Now, it's been a long time since I've used this particular colour of stickles, and I can't remember how it dries, because some of the stickles, they actually seem to almost disappear as you are not doing very well here. As it dries, you put loads on, and then when you come to look at it again, it's not three-dimensional anymore, it's really flat. So I'm putting more on than I think I'm going to need, just in case. And I'm going with a black centre because I've decided that this flower shape could pass for a sort of poppy type flower, and of course poppies have a black centre, so that's been my deciding factor. Nothing more complicated than that, but I think it's going to work. So I've got the rest of these to do, and I'm going to do those off camera, and I will be back with you once it's dried enough that we can actually handle these and put them into the vase. The centres of my flowers are starting to dry enough that I can actually handle them, and I can start to add them to my little skull. Now, obviously I've got to cut the stems down, but what I've done is I have glued the skull bead onto my little base that I made, and I have put some glue, quite a lot of glue, inside the top of the skull, and the idea is that this should hold the flowers into place. Now, I always start with one to try and get my level. That one's going to be probably a taller one. I need to get some that are shorter as well. So all that I'm going to do is I'm going to use my tweezers and drop everything, proving that, you know, it's real. I'm going to get my tweezers as close to the bit that's glued as possible, and then bend it a bit, hopefully without destroying the shape I've got to the actual flower. And I think that will sort of do. And then I'm going to cut it off. Now, this is where the tweezers are also useful, because once you get it shorter, holding it with your fingers is difficult, and my cutters don't want to cut, and I'm having one of those days. But there we have, and I think this is going to work, and I'm just going to pop this piece into the skull and try and figure out where it needs to go. I'm probably going to put this one a bit more towards the front and sort of underneath that one, like that. That's better. Now, I am going to carry on doing this until I have filled it with a suitable number of flowers. Now, I'm not expecting to get all 9 in there. I'd have to leave them quite long if I wanted to do that, but I will go for an odd number, so probably 5 minimum. Odd numbers just work better, and we will see how it develops. I arranged the flowers and I've added a couple of finishing touches. I used some black jewellery wire in the same gauge as the green to add a couple of spiral pieces that just add a bit more depth to the arrangement. That is literally just a case of wrapping the wire around something. I used the end of one of my tools and I made two pieces that are different heights, and it just gives the piece some extra depth. What I also did is I have added some stickles to the eye sockets of the skull. Now I've gone for stickles in Grape Crush, which was sort of the darkest purpley colour that I'd got, and that isn't dry yet, but it's just going to add, again, another dimension. But the flowers look great. I've got 4 that are visible from the front, I've got a 5th that is visible from the back, so if I decide to put this on somewhere where it's visible from different angles, you get a full rounded piece, and I'm really pleased. This is going to fit really, really well within my doll's house. Now obviously I made 9 flowers, not 5. So what I've done is I took a metal bead and I've just made a quite normal arrangement. Now this bead is from a set that I bought, which are really cool. They are actually metal. It's not just metal look plastic. And the set came with 2 of each kind, and I actually bought it for another design that's in there that I thought would make a really good table lamp base. But what I've done is I've again made it a base because this one would not stand up on its own, and then I've just arrange my flowers. I've got the 4 flowers, one at the back again, just in case it's visible. And then I've used some little pieces of the green wire to fill out the display and give it a bit of something more. This actually reminds me of some sprays of artificial flowers that I've seen, which are big faux poppies, and they've got sort of almost grass-like pieces with it. You could add leaves if you wanted to, but I think this is sufficient, and it just shows that the same technique can be used for any environment, whether you're going to be spooky or not. And so here we have them, flower arrangements 2 ways. As I say, you don't need anything particularly special to make these. You know, most of us will have beads, bits of wire. If it's not actually jewellery wire, it'll be bits of wire that you've kept from other things. Don't try and claim you don't do it. I know you do. If you make your own miniatures, you keep all kinds of stuff. You can use them to make these. Wire can be painted. Not always easy, but it can be painted. You can make it work, and you can make it work for any situation. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, please like, comment and subscribe. Maybe even ring that notification bell so you'll know when I upload a video. I upload pretty much every week, normally on a Friday, but I don't make any promises because sometimes real life gets in the way. And I'm getting close to 1,000 subscribers, and there might be something special on the cards when I get there. That's all I'm going to say. For now, bye.